से चला, जब नौरंग चढ़ा रानी पर हुआ मुल्क चल बिचल, जब नौरंग चढ़ा रानी पर हुआ मुल्क चल बिचल। अब कहूँ मंदसौर की, बोलो श्री प्राणनाथ प्यारे की जय, कृष्ण कन्हैया लाल की जय। Dear Sandarsaji, on yesterday's discourse, we talked about the events in Udaipur. Mahamati Prannathji leaves Kamapadi, and from Amir via Sanganer, Mahamati Prannathji arrives in Udaipur. The king of Udaipur is Raj Singh Rana. Mahamati Prannathji thinks for a moment he could be the Sakundal Sakhi he is looking for. He tries to awaken him. As we talked about the associates, the religious leaders, religious scholars that work for Raj Singh Rana, how they misguided the king of Udaipur because they didn't want to lose their jobs. They didn't have answers to the 40 questions of Mahamati Prannathji that he got from Bhagavatam and 15 questions from Vedanta. And as we all know that, the awakened consciousness of Tardam has answers to all the questions that we can find and extract from the Vedic and Abrahamic religious scriptures, while people are unaware of those deeper underlying questions that we find in those scriptures until they are awakened with Tardam. So none of the religious sages and scholars that work for Raj Singh Rana have any answers to any of the questions that Mahamati Prannathji had. So they misguide the king, saying that it is not worth meeting Prannathji by the king. And Mahamati Prannathji gives the references of three entities, three individuals. Lord Brahmaji, who worships the arrival of Sri Krishna. He prays for the well-being of Sri Krishna who is to be born, but he kidnaps his friends and the cows and tries to undermine his divinity. We also talked about the sages of Brajabhumi who are engaged in fire sacrifices and rituals, yet they decline offering food to Sri Krishna. And the third one we talked about says Rigu, who wants to test who is greater among the three, Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesha. The term is called Trinity, the Trinity. He wants to test who is greater among the three, and then he kicks Lord Vishnu on his chest, and Lord Vishnu awakens and he forgives. He asks for forgiveness from says Rigu for having to hurt his feet due to his solid chest, whatever it is. So Rigu realizes that Lord Vishnu is superior among the three. So Mahamati Prannathji says these three are the forefathers of the saints and sages that Raj Singh Rana sent to inquire about Prannathji. We also had a good interaction session about whether Aurangzeb was truly awakened, and on the basis of Britanta Muktavali, the autobiography written by Brajabhushanji Maharaj, whether we could assume that Aurangzeb was awakened, and we made some references from Laldassi's Beetak as well to state what we stated yesterday. So again, that is a debatable topic, debatable question that many of the Sundarsats and religious scholars of Pranami faith argue about and cannot agree on. But again, it's for each of us to decide whether we find the logic convincing or not. That is for us to decide. So, as we also talked about the story of Udaipur, the Emperor Aurangzeb sent his messenger to remind of the king of Udaipur if he was ready to be converted into Islam, and if he did so, he could be given a vast amount of land, and he could be the ruler of hundreds of thousands of people, more people than he already had. But he pushed the messenger, he criticized him, and he asked him to leave the palace. As the message is sent, the messenger got to Aurangzeb. He was in Rajasthan itself, in Ajmer. So he plans to attack Udaipur. So as it happens, the king of Udaipur sends a message to Prannathji saying that he is probably better off leaving Udaipur to a safe place because the country is going to be attacked by Aurangzeb. Mahamati Prannathji reminds him that that is what he desires and he would be able to handle the situation better. He would talk to the emperor Aurangzeb and remind him the true essence of Islam, that a true Muslim is the one who does not attack or criticize the people of other faiths for no reason. But the king of Udaipur does not listen. He says that it would not serve him well if during his reign the saints and sages are attacked and that he cannot protect them. So he insists that Prannathji leave Udaipur, and that is the reason why Mahamati Prannathji leaves Udaipur. Before he leaves, Mahamati Prannathji reminds Sundarsats that the situation could be dire, that since he is leaving Udaipur, he doesn't know how the situation would unfold in Udaipur. Because as we know that Prannathji is Lord Supreme Incarnate and he is pushed to leave Udaipur by the king of Udaipur. So obviously when you are not treating Prannathji right, the destiny would not be as conducive to the people of Udaipur. Mahamati Prannathji thus arrives in Mandeshwor, the nearby city. If we go by distance, it's about 180 kilometers away from Udaipur. So it's about 4 or 5 hours if you are driving, but Mahamati Prannathji was probably using the cart, so it would probably take a day or two to reach Mandeshwor. And before Mahamati Prannathji leaves for Mandeshwor, Mahamati Prannathji asks Sundarsats to renounce their worldly living, renounce their jewelries, their craving for nice costumes and all that, because Mahamati Prannathji sees that these Sundarsats have not renounced the world yet. They have been attached to the world still after awakening their souls. So Mahamati Prannathji wants them all to feel equal. So he asks all the Sundarsats to renounce their jewelry, good clothes, and all those things. And as we said yesterday, some of the Sundarsats were truly happy and they were joyful, while some of the others were okay with it. And there were some who regretted the decision to come along with Mahamati Prannathji, and we saw the distinction on the basis of whether they were truly awakened or not. The Brahma Sistries, the consorts of the Lord Supreme, were truly happy and blessed to be able to renounce that. They actually had wanted it for a long time. The Ishwari Srishtis were happy with it, they were okay with it because that is the path they were living on. They were trying to be renunciate, they were trying to realize their souls, so for them it was okay as well. While the Jivas, the ordinary souls, were not happy about Mahamati Prannathji's call and order because they were still engaged in the worldly matters. So Mahamati Prannathji arrives in Mandeshwor. It was the year 1737 when Mahamati Prannathji arrives in Mandeshwor. And before he leaves Udaipur, he had given all that they had, all the jewelries, all the things that they had, all the belongings, and they were just with very limited amount of goods that they had. Some kitchen utensils, probably a pair of clothes, loin clothes to wear, but nothing more than that. And Mahamati Prannathji is in a custom of a fakir. Fakir meaning someone who has renounced the world. He has a necklace that's made up of tulasi, kanti on his neck. He has 4 necklaces, and he looks so glorious in that custom, because it feels like all the Sundar Sajis have freed themselves from the world, as everyone is putting on loin clothes, the simple clothes, simple customs, and is walking with Mahamati Prannathji. Pehne pao mein panahi salat chatakani chala. All the Sundar Saji are walking towards Mandeshwor, and they are ready to start a new journey. So Mahamati Prannathji arrives in Mandeshwor. In Mandeshwor, a lot of people come to his discourse. A lot of Muslims and Hindus together, they come to Mahamati Prannathji's discourse. Vinayaka Muhammad ki sanande padi zabba daulat khana patana ko jo saaya tabba Vinayaka Muhammad hai aur na kaade bola fir yehi kahe yehi kaad tum kola. So there are a couple of Muslims. Daulat Khan came to Mahamati Prannathji's discourse. As Mahamati Prannathji was unraveling the teachings of Quran, and one of the chapters of the revelation made to Mahamati Prannathji from the book of Sananda Vinayaka Muhammad. So as he was chanting that, Daulat Khan understood that Mahamati Prannathji was indeed the Imam Mahdi, and he realized his eternal self, and he became the disciple of Mahamati Prannathji. Sher Khan and other Muslims as well come to Mahamati Prannathji's discourse, and they got initiated into Dharma. The only difference between the Hindu disciples of Mahamati Prannathji and Muslim disciples of Prannathji were that the Hindu disciples of Mahamati could embrace the holistic teachings of Dharma, while the Muslim disciples would have to be reminded of the teachings of Quran. They would have to be recited from Quran, because they could not fully renounce the teachings of Quran yet. So they would have to be constantly reminded from the ayats, the chapters of Quran. So this guy, Daulat Khan, started chanting the same praise, Vinayaka Muhammad, Vinayaka Muhammad, Vinayaka Muhammad, Vinayaka Muhammad, and that concept. So in the meantime, while Mahamati Prannathji is awakening the Hindus and Muslims alike in large numbers, Sundar Sat named Kriparam Bhai came from Udaipur. He was a little upset. He was a little sad, because he knew the state of Sundar Sats in Udaipur. They were all hiding in the forest. The king of Udaipur, Rasing Radha, had run away from Udaipur, and Udaipur had been attacked by the forces of Aurangzeb. So Sundar Satji were suffering. They were running for their lives. They were in such a state of difficulty. They were in such a state of trouble. They were in such a state of fear that they had no hope for their survival. So Kriparam Bhai came with a message from those Sundar Satji. They were grieving that Prannathji had also left, and they felt helpless. So Kriparam Bhai came with a letter from Sundar Satji, and Mahamati Prannathji, as he read the letter that Kriparam Bhai brought, Kriparam itaya taha pati de pukar, the grievances, the pleas of this Sundar Satji made Prannathji feel really bad, and he prayed to Raji Maharaj. He meditated on the lotus feet of Sri Raji Maharaj, and in the same time, some divine verses were revealed through him. The 6 prakarans, 6 chapters of Viraha, of separation, were revealed through him. And Mahamati Prannathji gave these verses, these couplets to Kriparambai and said and asked this Sundar Saji to chant these couplets. And anytime we run into troubles in life, anytime we find ourselves in difficult state, anytime we find ourselves grieving for the absence of Sri Raji Maharaj, we sing these 6 prakarans, 6 chapters that we know by the name of Viraha Ki Prakaran. As Prannathji's heart was connected to that of Sri Raji Maharaj, these verses were revealed to him. Balu briharasa vinoranga brahmar madto rudana kare jaladhar vasana rudana kare jaladhar apul khaviya laguthayo amati apul khaviya laguthayo amati jo koi tamasiya sirdar jo koi guti tamasiyo sirdar rudana kare jaladhar vasana rudana kare jaladhar. So these 6 chapters were revealed to Mahamati Prannathji, and Mahamati Prannathji gave this for those Sundarsats to chant. And it is believed that as these Sundarsats of Udaipur started chanting these verses, these couplets from Viraha's Prakaran, then they were all rescued. They did not have any trouble anymore, and none of the Sundarsats had to suffer at the hands of Aurangzeb. Mahamati Prannathji is in Mandeshwor. So again, this Viraha's Prakaran that we chant when we find ourselves in the state of trouble are included as a part of Nitya Path. We chant these verses every single day. Now, if we go deeper into the meaning of these chapters that are included in the book of Kirtan, these should be chanted every day, not only when we run into any troubles. Because these are the prakarans, these are the verses of separation. That was the feeling of these Sundarsats. They were suffering because they felt that Raji Maharaj, the grace of Raji Maharaj, was distant to them. So for the closeness, for the feeling of the eternal presence of Raji Maharaj in our lives, it is better off that we read these couplets every day. Mahamati Prannathji is there in Mandeshwar. A lot of Hindus are coming, a lot of Muslims are coming, and they have become the disciples of Mahamati Prannathji. Mahamati Prannathji is revealing the secrets of Vedic scriptures for the Hindus and is revealing the secrets of Quran for the Muslims. Because Mahamati Prannathji realizes that the Hindus would listen only the Vedic text and the Muslims would only listen to the discourse based on the Quran. As Mahamati Prannathji says in book of Sananda, chapter 32, verse number 20, मुस्लिम को मुस्लिम की, हिंदुओं को हिंदुओं की तरह ये समझे, ये सब समझे अपने मिले जब आए इमाम आखिर. So Mahamati Prannathji is awakening the Hindus and Muslims alike on the basis of their own scriptures. That is the reason why we find the references of Paramdham, references of the advent of moments, advent of the consorts of Lord Supreme, in both the Vedic and Abrahamic scriptures. The knowledge that Mahamati Prannathji has, the awakened consciousness that he has, had to have the synthesis of both the Vedic and Abrahamic scriptures, because Mahamati Prannathji came to bring together the sectarian knowledge that we find in both the Vedic and Abrahamic scriptures. So, Veda Kateva Chudavane Sahiba Ainatava. He came to this world to bring an end to the fighting between the Hindus and the Muslims. For that, he had to quote from the Vedas and he had to quote from the Quran. That is the reason why Raji Maharaj had sent those references in all different scriptures, be it that of Hindus or Muslims or the Christians one. And Mahamati Prannathji is awakening everyone along his way. Mahamati Prannathji is not done reaching out to Aurangzeb. Mahamati Prannathji is not done reaching out to the Muslims. Mahamati Prannathji wants to awaken every soul that he can find. As such, a guy named Ibrahim came to Mahamati Prannathji. He was a scholar of Islam. He could translate the teachings of Quran in Hindi. So Mahamati Prannathji wanted him to unravel the deepest secrets of Hussaini Tafsir. This guy named Ibrahim is translating the deeper teachings of Hussaini Tafsir, as we already talked about the glory of Hussaini Tafsir, the revelations of Hakikat from Prophet Muhammad to his grandson Hussein. So it has the content of Paramdham, the reality of Paramdham, and some intentions behind creations. While the present-day Quran only talks about the rituals and how to find the grace of Allah, Hussaini Tafsir contains the transcendent teachings that was revealed to Hussein by Prophet Muhammad. So Ibrahim was translating it. And as he was translating it, he was fascinated by what Mahamati Prannathji was saying versus what was there in Hussaini Tafsir. He had many Muslim disciples. As Ibrahim begins looking at Hussaini Tafsir and he is translating, he realizes how Quran was saying the same thing as Mahamati Prannathji was unraveling all along. One day, if he had a bad intention, so he ran away with Hussaini Tafsir while he was translating it. He didn't want Mahamati Prannathji converting Muslims into Tartan. He was not happy with many Muslim disciples that Mahamati Prannathji had. So he took off with Hussaini Tafsir. Mahamati Prannathji was upset, and Mahamati Prannathji had a disciple named Jahan Muhammad. He was a special disciple. So he ran after Ibrahim and he criticized him for doing such a silly thing that he ran away with Hussaini Tafsir. He criticized him and he told him if he would not promptly return Hussaini Tafsir to Prannathji, the consequences would be brutal to him, would be undesirable to him. So he finally comes back with Husseini Tafsir and regrets the choice that he made. He asked for forgiveness from Mahamati Prannathji. Mahamati Prannathji says that many of his disciples are still attached to the world. They have some sort of ego of their intellect, ego of their wealth, ego of their knowledge. So what Mahamati Prannathji asked Sundar Sat to do is go around town in Mandeshwor and beg for food. Mahamati Prannathji wants his disciples, his awakened souls, to be humble, to be meek, not feel the ego, not have the ego. So he asked them to bring the food begging around town. And Sundar Satji, some are happy with it again, some are okay with it, and some are not really happy with Mahamati Prannathji's call. So each of these Sundar Sats go around the city of Mandeshwor and bring some food, begging food. And when they beg food, sometimes they are appreciated because they are the saint. And in Vedic culture, we should always offer something to the saints and sages that come to our doors. They are the renunciates. They are the ones engaged in spiritual pursuit. So some of the people, especially the older generation, respects that we call jogi, actually, the beggars, the religious ones though. So sometimes they are given the due respect. The other people criticize them. You can work on your own. Why are you asking? Why are you begging for food? Sometimes they're criticized. So what that does is make these Sundar Sats humble. That is the reality of their lives, because they are working towards awakening their souls. And awakening does not happen so long as we have the ego inside us. So Mahamati Prannathji says, Bujaragi mare re Satji, Bujaragi mare. Jo Bujaragi lai dilapi tai koi na ubare. Those people with ego, they cannot be rescued even by the God. Even by God, they cannot be awakened by God himself. So Mahamati Prannathji asked his disciples, Sundar Sats, to renounce their ego. While it is easier said than done, renouncing ego is one of the toughest things, because we have a hard time admitting that we are wrong. We often find ourselves in a tough spot when we have to admit our mistakes, because we feel like we have something that the other person does not. We have the wealth, we have the intellect, we have the charisma, we have the personality, we have the characteristics. We believe that we are greater, we are superior, we are more intelligent, we are wealthier than the other individuals, and as such, we have the feeling of duality, we have the feeling of distinctions, while the reality is the Sundar Satji, the awakened souls, should experience the feeling of non-duality, should have the feeling of equality among all of us. So Mahamati Prannathji asked these Sundar Sats to beg their food and bring it to him. And as they come to Mahamati Prannathji with their bag full of foods, some of them are bringing breads made up of rice flours, some of them bringing the chapati and all those things. And Mahamati Prannathji takes a bite from each bag and asks, who brought this? Who brought this? And Mahamati Prannathji savors the food that they bring. And the awakened souls, Lal Dasi, Makanda Dasi, among others, are truly joyful to find out that Mahamati Prannathji is savoring the food that they brought with them. begging from the residents of Mandeshwor. Here, Mahamati Prannathji, some of his disciples were millionaires in the past. Take, for example, Laldas. He had more than 70, 80 ships that would export goods from Tatanagar to Arab. He was a rich guy before he joined the commune of Prannathji. Bhim Bhatta, Syam Bhatta, all those people, religious scholars, Chintamani, he had more than 500 disciples. All these Sundarshatsi are begging for food in Mandeshwar. Mahamati Prannathji wants to remove ego from their hearts and mind. So Mahamati Prannathji asked for their forgiveness as well in the meantime. Satguru, ऐसी में तुम्हारी गुनहगार कर कर बानी सुनाई तुमको किए खलक कुआर. Dear Sundarshatji, I'm sorry for what I've done to you. I'm the culprit because I'm asking you to leave your family. I'm asking you to do all these things and renounce the world that you hold so dear. Vaiji Maharani is doing the same. She is serving Sundarshatji. Sundarshatji are bringing food. And Mahamati Prannathji is truly happy that many of these Sundarshatjis have embraced what Mahamati Prannathji have asked them to do. Mahamati Prannathji in the meantime asked Mukunda Dasi to go to Aurangabad to awaken Vahab Singh Hada, the king of Aurangabad, because that is where Prannathji goes next. Mahamati Prannathji is trying to rally around the Hindu kings so that they can put up a fight against Aurangzeb. He wants to protect the Hindus because they have been mistreated for years by the Muslim emperors that ruled India for a long time. Mahamati Prannathji is looking for the kings because he is still looking for the Sakundal Sakya Paramdham. Mahamati Prannathji realizes that the king of Udaipur, Rasing Rana, did not have the spirit of Sakundal Bai in him. So Mahamati Prannathji asked Mukunda Dasi to go to Aurangabad and test if Vahab Singh Hada, the king of Aurangabad, could be awakened. And on tomorrow's discourse, we'll talk about Mahamati Prannathji's journey towards Aurangabad and the experiences of Mukunda Dasi in Aurangabad. There are some important lessons to be learned. There are some valuable lessons for all of us. Because when we walk on the path of awakening, when we trade on the path of awakening, we will encounter these scenarios. People would be critical of us. When we take true messages of awakening to the world, not everyone would be receptive of them. Mahamati Prannathji talks about Dajjal, the enemies of truth, all across Beetak, all across Lalda's description of the life accounts of Satguru and Mahamati Prannathji, that he meets those Dajjals every step of the way, because truth is not embraced by everyone. Truth cannot be embraced by everyone. Mahamati Prannathji finds himself in Sitamo. Mahamati Prannathji goes to Nolai and Ujjain, and we will talk about some of the events in those places and Mahamati Prannathji's subsequent arrival in Aurangabad and how he was received by Vahab Singh Hada in Aurangabad and the awakening thereon. Those would be the topic for tomorrow's discussion.